Hello. Well, I thought we might just wait a minute to see if other attendees are going to join. Um, but then we'll give it a minute and then we'll begin. Well, let's start. So I want to. It's a small crowd, so I welcome what is the first webinar in a series of webinars leading up to the G20 in South Africa in November. It's been hosted by the G20 Interfaith Forum, along with a new organization that myself and Kevin Highland have established called Preveni, which focusing on preventing modern slavery. And in this webinar, we're going to talk about the fishing industry in particular. And the reason for starting with the fishing industry is it's probably the most pervasive of and widespread of all industries that there are, both land and sea. And so this afternoon, I'm going to welcome four individuals who've committed a lot of their life to fishers and those working in the fishing industry, and at the same time also to their faith. I welcome Father Bruno Ciceri. He's a Scalabrian missionary, spent his life caring for migrants, refugees and seafarers. Was in the Philippines for 10 years from 1985, and then another 10 years in Taiwan as director of Stella Maris International Service Center. Now based in Dubai, up until recently, he was the international director for Stella Maris Network, first at the Pontifical Council for Migrants and Itinerant People, and then afterwards reform of Pope Francis under the Diastery for promoting integral human development in the Vatican. Welcome Dr. Jess Sparks from Tufts University. She's assistant professor in the Division of Agriculture, Food and Environment at the Friedman School of Nutrition and Science and Policy. Jess's research uses mixed social science methods to center the voices of oppressed workers in illuminating, conceptualizing and quantifying a range of working conditions in the seafood supply chains and to provide an evidence base to end exploitative labor practices. She has been, I know, working on a project, I think, with Stella Maris, and during this the next hour, hopefully we'll hear more about that research project. I also welcome Dornapapa Sukri. This is the co-founder of executive director of Mast Human. I've known Dornappa for a long time, and I will just call her Dorna, if that's okay. A non-profit social enterprise committed to combating human trafficking and forced labor, advocating for protection over the enduring trauma of legal proceedings for victims. Dorna spearheaded moving from just a sort of a legal practice and helping workers to spearheading the development of the Mast Human Intelligence app, and we'll talk about that during this hour. And finally, Father Eduardo Gabriel is a missionary of St. Charles, working with the Scalabrini International Migration Network. He's a PhD in sociology, which forms, I think, a lot of his work, studying for several years at the Scalabrian Mission in Manila until his ordination as a Scalabrian father in 2020. He's writing and has been writing a monthly article on migration in the Pontifical Institute for Foreign Missions in Brazil, and as at the Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish in Jundiaí, Brazil, as the assistant priest from March till 2021. He recently has also been appointed in South Africa. So I welcome the speakers, and we're going to conduct this as a conversation rather than a series of presentations. So what I wanted to ask, first of all, I'll ask Jess, is to explain a bit more about the experience that fishers have working in the industry and the kind of abuse and conditions that they experience.
Sure. Thanks, Duncan. So typically, when we talk about working conditions, we conceptualize them on a spectrum, so a range of working conditions. And at the really good end, we have what we call decent work. So equitable wages, productive work, social security benefits like compensation, workman's compensation, etc. And at the extreme end, we have forced labor, which would include, and human trafficking, which would include things like debt bondage or being so indebted to your employer that they're manipulating that debt to increase it, or you feel like you can't leave your place of employment because of that debt. It may include things like physical violence, emotional violence, starvation. We know that increasingly there are a diversifying number of migrant fishers on board a single boat. So you might have, 9 different nationalities, which creates communication challenges, which also causes fighting and is a mechanism of control for those who have the power. But we also have a lot of working conditions, sort of in that middle, I like to say, that don't reach the threshold of forced labor, which is a pretty high threshold, but are certainly not decent work. And so those are things like inequitable wages. I worked in the UK for many years, and Filipino fishers are paid 1,450 US dollars. Ghanaians get paid about £1,000, and British nationals are making several thousand pounds a month, and they could all be working side by side on the same boat. We know in the fishing industry, there is a huge issue with extremely long work hours with very little rest, which seem to be getting amplified by climate change. And unfortunately, though we have minimum guidelines from the ILO, a lot of times people use the excuse, well, fishing is fishing. When you're on the fish, you have to keep fishing to perpetuate these extremely abusive working hours. So there's a whole range of things that can go on board, that can occur on board a vessel.
Donna, could you add to the Jess's introduction? I know, well, we worked together, have both represented fishers in Thailand from a legal perspective, and then most recently building your app have almost, I think, 20,000 individuals on the app and collecting information from that perspective. Also, Thailand has been a focus, whether it's been through the corporate aspect or through just a lot of charitable work that has gone, civil society work that's gone on in Thailand. It's been a focus for the fishing industry as well, from both the government side and from the civil society side for quite a number of years. Could you add a bit more color to Jess's perspective from the Southeast Asian experience?
So for Southeast Asia, experience for fishing is similar to other regions, but the thing is, what I receive information from fisher on the first hand is they work long hour for sure, and also they don't have skill because they always said that fishing using like low skill workers, they don't need to be training anything for is a concern their health and safety because they don't know what exactly dangerous how dangerous it is for working in fishing. I saw a lot of fisher on our case that have a amputate hand amputate or other thing accident at fishing is a lot, and some of them they cannot swim, even can swim, so how they can survive if something happen at sea. And they're working long hour, and for to the shock for me is abusive is physical abusive is quite common in fishing because somehow they think that it for them is they did something bad, the captain or skipper they have the right to hit them in order to make it order in other thing, and I just feel like it's not right in terms of this. And I think the most vulnerable for fisher is the isolate condition because it's all sea and they cannot seek help. They cannot contact uh, someone at home. So when they confiscate the document and other thing, they don't know how to seek help. That's why it's come to us that one person, they said they lost contact with their family for 27 years. And at that moment, I think that I need something to make them connect to their family, how they can seek help and empower them. That's why we create the technology in order to prevent them from trafficking.
Thank you, Donna. Bruno, from a sort of global perspective, are those the kinds of experiences that you find from the Stella Maris perspective across the planet, from workers in all geographies?
Yes, that's the point. I think one thing that is important to say is that doesn't matter if you are on board of a Taiwanese fishing vessel or a Korean fishing vessel or a Thai fishing vessel or even British or Scottish fishing vessel, the situation is the same. As been mentioned, these long hours of work. The point is not only the long hours of work, because it will create fatigue. And when there is fatigue, occupational accident happen quite often. The other point that was mentioned by Donna is also isolation, because these fishing vessels, now they can spend even 3 years at the time on the fishing ground. And generally, the skipper, the officer are changed, but the migrant fisher, they remain for all this time out at the sea, isolation. And one battle that is being done now is to have the opportunity to have Wi-Fi so that they can contact their family and everything. It was very interesting that one of the fishermen says, no Wi-Fi, no wife. So that means they are completely isolated and everything. But that is the situation. In the early 90s, we thought that this phenomenon of exploitation of fishers was limited to Asia, but actually even in Europe, especially Scotland and Ireland, we have many cases of fishermen that they have been exploited in different way, maybe sometimes also because of loophole that there are present in the legislation, and so they can, the skippers or the owner of the fishing company, they can exploit this situation, and the poor fishermen, they come from Philippines or from Egypt or from other country, and when they find themselves there because they have been in debt already, because they have paid so much money just to arrive to that, they keep silent and they have to bear all the exploitation, the sufferings that is being inflicted to them.
Thank you, Bruno. Father Eduardo, as the sociologist, I'm going to ask you a little bit more of a structural question. Developing the themes and the detail that the other three speakers have provided, how do we think of taking these lived experiences and the points that are raised, think about it in a more social structural way of poverty, of gender certainly is an issue, because these are mostly men working on fishing vessels with their partners, exactly as Bruno said, no Wi-Fi, no wife. And as Donna also said, this isolation for 27 years. How do we bring that into the structural context?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm really glad to be here in this conversation, even because when I was in the Philippines, in Manila, I experienced 1 year work in the US in Manila, with Father Paolo, and also long contact with Father Bruno. And unfortunately, I asked my superior to continue to work in the US, but by the vow of obedience, I need to change. But still, my heart is in the US, and this for me was a great opportunity to go back to my notes. And I was really very happy to go back in the memories when I was in Manila. Regarding your question, of course, you know very well, and it's important to start with the sociological point of view that human trafficking is a crime, is a very difficult crime around the world. You know very well this, and just for the sociological point of view, it's important to stress this start point. And connected with this, I just want to summarize somehow 4 important points, as it was mentioned before. But first of all, no doubt that debt bondage among the fishermen many fishermen are lured with promises of good wages, but end up trapped in debt, especially the time of recruitment. This is a very especially crucial time that you really feel the problems starting. The recruitment agencies or boat owners charge excessive fees for transportation and overall equipment, etc. This is a very, very crucial moment. The second point, as also was mentioned, violence and abuse. Attracted fishermen often endure physical abuse, long hours, etc. And the third point for me, very important, is pay. Some workers receive little pay, with captains withholding wages under false pretenses. This is a very, very, very difficult situation. And passport confiscation. Many migrants, fishermen have their passports taken, leaving the instrument at sea or for months of years. So, and finally, it's important to contextualize the contributing factors. As we know, the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, many abusive practices occur on regulated vessels that operate outside the law. So for me, starting our conversation, just to make sure that these 4 points are very clear, and that social point of view really is important to contextualize the situation where we start the big problem of human trafficking among fishermen.
Thank you, Eduardo. So I wanted to go back and think that the fishing industry is an old and ancient industry, and unlike the industrial agricultural complex, which we can pinpoint more, starting obviously with antebellum slavery and so the British Empire, when we look at fishing, we think, oh well, this goes back to the beginning. This is early part of subsistence of humanity for thousands of years. At what point did it become an industry where exploitation was occurring? Bruno, would you like to sort of explore that with me?
I think the situation started when, for example, in Taiwan, or even now in England, in Ireland and Scotland and everything, that the local people, they didn't want to do the work anymore because it's very intensive labor, what we were saying, is fatigue and everything. And the money that they were getting was not enough. And so, for example, in Taiwan, the situation that I know better, in early 1990s, the government started importing migrant workers to be employed on fishing vessels because the local people, they didn't want to do this work anymore because you have to be away for a long time, things that we have been saying, and the money was not worthy. But for these people coming from situation of poverty and everything, so even if they get $500 a month working 20 hours a day, when they send it back to their family, if they are able to send it back all without all the deduction and everything, that is something that can really help their families. So the situation is that means the technology has improved also on certain things, but there is still a lot of manuality on the fishing industry. Means when you have to disengage the fish from the hook and everything, there is no machine that they can do it. It has to be done manually. And also the fact that means when you find a school of fish, you cannot say, oh, it's 6 o'clock, it's time to go home. Means you are there and you keep fishing and get the fish until you end up. And we have to recognize also that in this country that we have been mentioning, the fishing industry play a big role because it's a part of the economy of the country. And so with all the new regulation and everything, also the fishing vessel owner, they cannot save money on fuel, they cannot save money on maintenance of the fishing vessel. So the only way that they can save money is to reduce the salary of the fisher. And that's why local people, they didn't want to work anymore. And so they went out and they looked for people coming from developing countries.
Thank you, Bruno. I saw both Donna and Jess agreeing with you. Donna, you obviously agree with that, and can you add more detail to that from your perspective, Donna?
Yes. For me, I get the same point that they cannot decrease any money on fuel and other things. It's a hard cost on that, and people can always exploit it on that. And I think for the way that you start to using migrant workers, that means they're more vulnerable than local workers, because something is language they cannot understand. If they want to free from the hardship on that, how they go, because it's a foreign land in the port, you cannot ask for help anything. So it means that we have some things say that everything in their fist, if you want to squeeze it, they're still there anyway, nowhere they can go. That's why I think they start exploit, because they see that migrant worker or fisher cannot fight back or cannot rescue or cannot escape. That's why they keep pushing until I don't think until they fight back, but until the story broke out to the world by media and other things. That means someone see something in what happened at sea, so we overhaul it. Is otherwise gonna be exploit further,
No, that makes good sense. Jess?
Yeah, I agree with everything others have said. I'll also add, back when I was living and working in the UK, we actually had an archival project, and we found that the first time that there's evidence of migrant workers in the English and Scottish fishing industry was actually as far back as the 1860s. And what they were doing is, it's when the vessels industrialized. So they switched to bigger trawlers, and same thing, labor shortages. Local people didn't want to do that type of fishing. And so they went and recruited people from Ireland under an apprenticeship scheme. And if you were an apprentice, you could be paid significantly less than if you weren't an apprentice. So, these exploitive situations have existed for a long time. And they ebb and flow. And of course, we're in a moment in time where they seem to be increasing. And I'll add two other things that I've seen in the European and the North American fishing fleets is around 2000, we see an uptick in very restrictive immigration policies, which means that migrant fishers often are forced to live on board vessels in places like the UK and the US. So they come to these countries to work, but they don't actually have permissions to work in the country, which means they can work on the boats, but then they live on board and they're not allowed to step off. They're not allowed to step foot in those countries. And why that's significant is because if you have a grievance or you want to report a concern, many fishers feel like their only options, because they don't have work permissions, is to either just put their head down and keep working, or if they do want to report it to authorities, there may be, like the national referral mechanism or other schemes, similar schemes, but those schemes don't allow them to work because they never actually had work permissions for that country in the first place. And then another pressure that we sometimes see that I think causes influxes is also when in 2008, we had the global economic recession and the cost of fuel increased significantly. And I think Father Bruno was talking about, what costs are under your control. And so in the European and the North American fleets, we see a pretty significant uptick in the use of migrant workers because they're deemed as cheaper. They see them as cheap labor. And so they'll use that to offset the cost of increased fuel, or if stocks have been overfished, and it, gets more expensive to maintain yields, they'll offset those costs by, quote unquote, seeking out cheap labor sources.
That's really helpful. I'm going to ask you afterwards if there's any link to that archival project, so that I can put that in the briefing paper that will follow this webinar.
It actually
Eduardo,
never got
sorry.
funded.
Oh
So
no.
we wrote a grant for it, so I did the preliminary check with the archives, but unfortunately it never got funded. So
Well, we will make note of it in the briefing when we circulate it, and maybe someone will fund it because it sounds important. Eduardo, sort of final thoughts on this point.
Yes, thank you. Your question is when the fishing started to become a problem in modern time. So when you ask the question, your question immediately came to my mind that historical movie of Charlie Chaplin, Modern Time. So I believe that you can start in the historical perspective and a wider interpretation to see that fishing start to become a modern problem with this and industrialization period in history, you know? So I don't know, I cannot explain properly, but when you ask the question, then the movie came to my mind, Modern Time. If you don't watch it, please go to watch this movie. It's a beautiful movie. It can help us to understand in a wide perspective, historically, sociologically, this problem. No, I'm saying that very short. I do believe that fishing became a modern problem in time of industrialization, in the history. This is really very, very important. And you can see the real picture of this in the Modern Time movie.
Thank you, Father Eduardo. I'd like to ask, and maybe Father Eduardo, we should stick with you, is thinking about the vulnerability of both the migrant worker going to the vessel, making their way to the vessel, but also then with their departure is the vulnerability of those left behind. And it would be great to just talk a little bit now about the kind of more underlying structural vulnerability of taking that risk, and also as part of that to think about the fact that obviously those people who lived on the coast who were fishing families, they didn't take the jobs because they either certainly we decided, well, the pay is not for us or we don't want to do it that way, but there was a risk element that they did not want to take that others, unseen and unknowing, end up taking. So if you could add a bit more detail to first of all, the vulnerability and the decision of the family being split apart by migration, and the vulnerability of those left behind, and obviously the journey that is about to be made. I'd be very grateful.
Okay, for me, talking about the vulnerability, the first, very well is economic vulnerability, the poverty and lack of alternatives. Beneficiaries come from low income and backgrounds with limited job opportunities, forcing them into hazard work for survival. So economic vulnerability is really very, very important start point. Second, debit bondage, recruitment scam. Some workers are tricked into taking loans for job placement. Third point is unstable income, pay structures like share system, mean earnings are really very, very low. And another point is legal and regulatory gaps. You see that really weak enforcement, like of contracts. They are very crucial points, thinking on human trafficking on fishermen. And the vulnerability also are talking about dangerous working conditions, high fatality rates, forced labor, human trafficking, and long hours, and so on. No? So I believe, and I just stress this, for a sociological point of view, we need to stress the economic vulnerability, poverty, and lack of alternatives among the fishermen. This is for me really very very crucial for us to see the reality of human trafficking among fishermen.
Thank you, Rod. Jess, do you want to add more to that, and particularly thinking about those left behind and that initial journey?
I don't think I'm the one on the call actually with the expertise in that area, as I tend to work mostly with the fishers rather than the family. But I can say one thing that I've been involved with some fishers who unfortunately have died and their families that have been left behind. And I think that's actually where Stella Maris is very, very meaningful organization within the community. I've had the privilege of witnessing firsthand Stella Maris Philippines supporting the wife and child of a fisherman who died under exploitive conditions in the UK. So I will defer to others.
Well, let's defer to Bruno. Bruno, would you like to talk more of this, and then come to Donna?
Yeah, I think the first vulnerability are that these people, they live with their family in a situation of poverty. And so what they want to improve the situation of their families. And so the problem is that sometimes if they go through the institutional channel, might require documents, might require many things. And so sometimes some of them, they entrust themselves to illegal recruiter or to people that they say, oh, look, if you work on a fishing vessel, you will make so much money and everything. And so these people, they entrust themselves. And what was interesting when I was in Taiwan, and we realized that often these illegal recruiters are part of the family circle. So it could be an uncle, could be a friend of the father or other things. And so these people, for example, they go to Singapore because as a Filipino, they can go to Singapore without visa. They enter with a tourist visa, but after they will embark on a fishing vessel. Of course, they have to pay money. They have to pay for medical. They have to pay for the tickets. And when they are there and they realize in which trap they fell on, it's too late for them to go back. But they move and they want to do this to give a better life to their family. Of course, the other vulnerability is that they don't know anything about their rights. They don't know what they can request or anything. And so they just entrust themselves to whatever happens. And the point is the greatest vulnerability is the moment when the fishing vessel leaves the port and goes out at sea. There is no more convention, there is no more legislation or anything. At sea, the skipper is the god. He can have power of death and life about you. And when you are 5,000 miles away in the middle of the sea, there is no one can help you. So that's the greatest vulnerability, because they cannot call on anyone. And what pushed them is the fact that I'm doing it for my family. I want to give a better future, but there they can be exploited in any way because they think about their family.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Donna, what is happening back at home? So you built an app that actually helps the fishers speak to those people back at home, and I also understand that actually law enforcement has a connection into the kind of ecosystem you built as well. But just starting that first part, which is, what have you found as you've been working with both the fishers and their families, and just taking that point of departure and Bruno's earlier comment of no Wi-Fi, no wife, and no family. Can you elaborate more on that?
In Southeast Asia, there have some different, because in Thailand we have big industry of the fishing, right? And because of a politic allow here that make people come over to Thailand. They have no choice. And once they get on board, right, that they don't have anyone to rely on. That's why recently we found that fisher always have phones, and phone is maybe it's not it's work function very well, but it's still working. The way we want to do it, we want to use the limited data as much possible, because we rely on what they call, the law said that you're going to have like 15 minutes per month that allow fisher to have some data to contact. So that's why we decide the app that can contact to send location to their loved one at home about the location, and use very small data. And we decide to make it work, because you cannot make it work no matter you have Wi-Fi connection at that time or not. It's queued to our car. When you got the Wi-Fi or get a signal, the system gonna alert to their loved one to see. We not exactly send the message, but the signal that they're not okay and they need to seek help along with the location. And now we work with law enforcement in Thailand. We work with Department of Special Investigation, because somehow we have the alert system. Just you put something and say that you're not okay. We send the exact location to their loved one. And also we also have what we call the witness report and other thing that allow them to send a message to and it's work even do not have Wi-Fi. Once you got Wi-Fi from both, get closer to your both, or even once the open Wi-Fi is gonna do our system. That means they can send voice, they can send photo, and we transfer it to law enforcement in time of need. And we don't expect anyone to rescue them at sea, but we have some time in order to send information, connect using the law enforcement network, so they can help in terms of especially for seafarer or mission to seafarer or sailor maris, they help at port. We expect to send information data and have someone to intercept when they fish on at port. Or that's how our technology work.
No,
I
thank you.
just wanted, I
Sure,
just
sure.
want to add, if you allow me, please, Duncan. I just saw in my notes here also a very common and basic vulnerability is the language barriers. No, of course, native speakers may not understand so safety instructions. So I'm saying that the communication, the vulnerability of communication on board and all these things, because the people might not speak English, they can. So the vulnerability of communication also, I believe that is a very crucial vulnerability that you must consider. Thank you.
No, thank you, Eduardo. Bruno, and to Donna, but what is happening back at home when the vessel leaves and then the money does not get remitted back to the family? What is happening to in this case, it's mostly mothers, children, a larger family community. What vulnerabilities are occurring there as months pass, or as Donna gave an example of 27 years passing?
Yeah, the point is that when the fisher leave the family is already in debt, because as I said, maybe they have to pay the recruiter, they have to pay the tickets and everything. And so if the money doesn't arrive, so they will start losing the things. So maybe they have, get a loan from the bank for with the land that they had. And so the bank get the land and all these kind of things, and the debts they keep accumulating on it. And as was saying, often the family doesn't know where they are, and so they cannot even ask. They cannot try to find out what's happened, because also, at least on my experience, often these fisher, they live, but they don't give much information to the family. So my experience was when there was some tragedy and we were able to contact the family and everything, you start asking questions to the family, and the family said, oh, I didn't know. who is the agent, oh, he didn't tell us, all these kind of things. So that's the other things. And the family, so the dream that the fisher has to improve the life of the family, it becomes a nightmare because they get deeper and deeper in poverty and in misery. That's the problem. And also, for example, we had cases where there were cases of trafficking and everything. And from Taiwan, we were sending them back to the Philippines and would say, look, we have Stella Maris there. We can help to file a case against the illegal recruiter and everything. And but they never went back to Stella Maris in Manila to try to file the case, because these people, they want money. So they, and we know when you file the case against the recruiter, the illegal recruiter, it takes long time. Maybe they live in the province, they have to come to Manila. And of course, the illegal recruiter knows the law very well, and he can manipulate everything. And so these people at a certain point, even the few that they wanted to file a case, they give up the case and they start again in a circle. They try to try their luck again another time.
I'm going to come back to just working off the point of the misery and the isolation. When I previously was working on the fishing industry, and we would read and hear the reports from victims, and I wanted to just bring the issue of which is an important part of this webinar series, of faith, was that many of the victims would say that they were just so relieved to see somebody, and that ultimately they are people of faith praying for some kind of intervention. Both the Scalabrino work and Stella Maris are, faith is central to your work. And I wanted both of you, and obviously Donna and Jess, please join this, but if you could tell us more about the role both of faith in the work of people providing care, but also in the world of the victims, because I think that's something that often isn't really talked about, is that is often a place that they seek solace. Father Eduardo, would you like to sort of start that thought?
Yes, now you jump for number 9 according to our agenda. So that's why I was waiting for this moment. But anyway, really, and it was what I put in my summary, the assistance for the families. And I still remember a very short experience I had when I was in Manila. I went the 2 sisters to visit a community of fishermen in the north of the Philippines. It was for me a very strong experience to visit a couple of families there, and you see first the importance of the presence of the religious and missionary people within. They, first of all, they trust us, the religious people, especially the nuns, more than the priests. But they really, the families, they like to talk and to share their own personal struggles with the people from the family in the fishing industry, especially in context of human trafficking. So they want to share. It's a very important point. I really noticed with my own eyes to see that they are talking with the nuns there and they're crying. And so the presence of the religious people with the families, it's really very, very important. Just the presence and to talk and to share. And they need to talk about these things. And I really just listened to the nuns and I learned with them how to with the families. But I do believe that also connected with the poverty and economic problems and the family, we see that the low education brings that lack of awareness about human trafficking. So in short, at the end, I saw the sister in that experience talking, saying the problem, the situation of human trafficking for the families in a very simple words, in a very simple reality or conditions. So very simple expressions of human trafficking. You need to be careful, don't trust them, etc., etc., etc. So for me, this is kind of very important also presence of the religious people with the families. And continuing, also the second important point for me is the advocacy what AOS is doing very, very well. But I just want to stay with this experience that I saw with the nuns, the sisters in the Philippines, to be there with the families, praying with them, and they spend an hour more listening them and to be in the reality of the people there, the families, especially the women, the children, and say in a few words more than us. We know all this kind of all this expression of human trafficking and the law, international law, etc. But the sisters, they could explain then in a few words, in simple words, the reality, the problem, the situation of human trafficking. I say that the person of the religious people is there to be with them. It was my experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Bruno, could you add more about particularly your work in Stella Maris in this?
Yeah, I can talk for the Filipino that mostly are Catholic. I have less experience with the Indonesian fishermen that basically are Muslim. Maybe Donna can say something more about this. The point is they have a very simple faith. So, and they bring with them maybe the booklet with the novena, the rosary and everything. And after is a fatalistic, I would say, approach, because when you tell them, but you see what's happened, this, you know, this and that, they say, but God will protect me. It's not going to happen to me. There is this kind of approach. They can see the tragedy, they can see the suffering, they can see everything, but nonetheless, they say, no, God will protect me. And I think it's true, means the faith that they have together with the love that they have for their family is the one that gives them the strength to bear all the things that they have to go through. So it's a very simple faith, and they never doubt that God will be their side and help them anywhere. When they arrive to us, you see, God brought me to Stella Maris. So even if they have suffered for so long, but they said, at the end, God was with me and brought me to Stella Maris and everything. So this is the things. For the people at home, faith is again also a very simple things that, especially when they might not have any news, or when also sometimes tragedy will occur. They found in faith solace and comfort and everything, especially when, as Eduardo said, the religious, they get involved in everything, supporting them. So that is what gives some sort of consolation for them. But it's just a fatalistic attitude that God will be always with them.
Well, thank you, Bruno. Just you're raising your point about Dorna's experience. Donna, I know from working in Thailand previously, when we were trying to work on awareness campaigns for migrant workers within Thailand, and actually the same I think applied for Cambodia too, was that we were told, well, a lot of migrant workers before they set out would often go to the Buddhist temple to get a blessing before they set out, and their faith played a very important role in their journey and setting off. I wonder if you could add more about the aspect of faith for both the workers and for the families at home, and the role that the temple plays.
As you say that in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, all majority is Buddhist. So in Thailand, even they have a Myanmar temple in coastal provinces. So the temple for Myanmar, they keep like traditional that different from the Thai temple. Is different, and in there they build community with solidarity. They help each other. Sometimes I went there once when do some awareness campaign, and it seemed like they pray before they go out at sea. And when something happened for them, for Buddhists, they have some kind of to enjoy it, because it's like karma. They believe in karma, so they just enjoy it until something past and believe in the good deed, so they can wash away from this thing. And also in Thailand, they have a lot of Christian organization that provide help for them, and not much on only for Christian, and I think just show the love of God on other things. So in Thailand, it's quite mixed, not much because we branded in faith is like Islam, Christian, and Buddhist. They some kind of branded together. And for migrant worker in Thailand, mostly they Buddhist, and they rely on community at the temple and seek help. And it's like it's kind of a community center in foreign land. That's what I say.
Thank you, Donna. I wanted to spend the last 10 minutes just talking about prevention, something that's important to us at Preveni. But we're going to sort of bounce off the point that Eduardo made, which is this is a crime ultimately. And I think we've established, from Jess's point, that this goes back to an industry in the 18th, 19th century. And, that kind of a deception of, oh, you could be an apprentice, which is really an excuse that we're not going to pay very much. I mean, that it goes back 200 years is extremely disappointing and yet unsurprising. Jess, where is the failure of both prevention and accountability in an industry that is now getting a lot of focus on it?
I think it's a lot of things. I mean, lots of societal problems. I think entities end up in response mode because it is a crisis. You're talking about something, some of the worst things that can happen to humans. And so you're so focused on sort of the response piece that it can be hard to pivot. And I think, when we look at other influences like supply chain actors who have a lot of power and are purchasing this fish, no one's really willing. They want quick solutions, and they're not willing to really do the hard work of identifying like root causes, which go to a lot of sociological things like immigration precarity. I know there was a question about regulation, and I can pick on the UK for a second, because in the UK, we have relatively well-managed stocks on the environmental side. We have the UK Modern Slavery Act. We also have ratified, one of the few countries that have ratified the ILO Work and Fishing Convention. And we still have exploitation every day. We have active cases of forced labor that are being investigated by the police at this current moment. And part of it is this precarity from immigration, it's discrimination, the acceptance that it wouldn't be okay for a UK national to work every single day for 10 months, but it's okay for that Filipino fisher to work every single day for 10 months. And so even when you have regulation, it actually is about the implementation, and that implementation needs to be strong enough to actually start pushing you towards prevention. And it's not just regulation about trafficking or regulation about fishing. It's these root causes, things that drive poverty, things that drive immigration precarity, discrimination, that also need to be addressed in order to really get us to prevention, in my opinion.
Thanks, Jess. Donna, talking about, there's a question about the recruitment agents and about the recruitment, where, we constantly, both in the fishing industry and so many other industries, this issue of the recruitment agents and the manner in which people are recruited and deceived ultimately into these situations. Where has been the failing on tackling the recruitment agents, and how, what progress have you seen in Thailand?
In Thailand, they have a lot of progress about we overhaul the fishing industry. The problem is we overhaul everything, and as Jess said, that the regulation, everything going well, everything in paper going well, but implementation and enforcement is quite not strict, not consistent. I mean, not sustained enough in terms of that. But the bad thing is, we believe that we do a lot of things in terms of prevention, and it's come to believe that there is no problem in the fishing sector anymore. Turn back to your problem about the employment for the recruitment. They have a lot of things in terms of having a contract, having not paying for the recruitment fee. But in Southeast Asia, the harder thing to tackle is informal recruitment. That means someone you know try to deceptive, try to lure each other. There is not rely on the formal recruitment as in other countries. There's going to be someone who is your relative, your friends, that say something that, oh, go to this fishing vessel, it's very good, you get money, you get a cut from fishing. The more you work, the more you get the money. Because in cases that I represent, the trafficking survivor, they still hold the paper that say how many fish they caught and how much they're gonna expect to that. They hold on to that. But now we talk about only for the wages for per day. But in for fisher, what lure them into working not only for the payment by minimum wage, but also the cut from they put their hard work in terms of getting for cut on that. And we we did not focus on that because we sometimes when we enforce the law, we not understand the nature why they put them into this situation, why they go to fishing in the dirty work, dangerous work, and difficult work like this. That how I think is might be some adjustment for the local perspective in terms of attract to the root cause, as just said.
Thank you, Donna. Bruno, at a government level, at a policy level, one of the things that I've always felt is that there's a romanticism about the fishing industry, and there's a sort of reluctance to want to meet it head on. And what's your experience of the attitude towards confronting the fishing industry on its problems by governments and policymakers?
I think the responsibility of the situation in which the fisher found themselves is both on the sending country and on the receiving country. The sending country, they just want to send out people so that they can reduce the social pressure, they reduce unemployment and other things. And even if they know that they are national, they might be exploited and everything, but they still also sometimes accept compromises with the receiving country regarding the contract and everything, so they can send, and often the receiving country plays a little bit with the different country sending. So sometimes we stop the recruitment of Filipinos, so the number of Indonesian fisher goes up, and after they stop, the Indonesian let the Vietnamese goes up. And so it's a kind of a game that they play around, so that if one sending country start demanding a little bit more protection for their nationals, so the receiving country will stop their recruitment, and of course that put pressure on the sending country. On the other hand, the receiving country could maybe do more on implementing and preventing also exploitation of the fisher, because I think legislation, regulation, they are all there. And as we say, on the paper they are working, but there is no enforcement on that. And so that is where the poor fishermen, they will fall in all these kind of troubles. But also the problem is that the receiving country, because as I was saying before, the fishing industry play an important role. So the politician, they don't want to get the fishing industry against them. Especially in Taiwan, when there are elections, the different fisher association, they play an important role. So if any legislation is implemented and everything, and you get the reaction of the fishing vessel owner, politically is not good to do that. And so that's why the exploitation continues. Is the fault of both government. At the international level, means we have the Convention 188, there are Cape Town Agreement, there are so many things, but after are not implemented or limited implemented, and so there's not much that can be done.
Thank you, Bruno. We
And
have
also,
one
if
minute.
you, Father Bruno, allow me to add,
No,
of
add,
course,
please.
we cannot forget also the very famous corruption in the government level. So unfortunately, this is really, really big reality. I don't know in our countries, but here in Brazil, we know this reality. You know? So it's really a very, very big challenge for us to face this corruption in the port and so on and so on. So this is really disgusting thing for us to deal with, but fortunately, it's a very reality among us in these situations. Thank you.
Jess and Donna, one last thought. Things for prevention that we should be investing in. What's an immediate couple of things that need attention immediately? Jess?
I would say investment in helping fishers organize, be it through unions or through other forms of organizations, so that they can make collective demands. They're not reliant on government inspectors enforcing their rights, but they have the knowledge and the ability and the security to enforce those rights themselves. I think we also really need to invest in understanding wages, how we can lift wages in the sector across the board, across nationalities, and how do we prevent retaliation? Because in order for those, fishers to make collective demands, to raise grievances, to enforce their rights, requires protection against retaliation, which has been extremely difficult in the fishing sector. But there are certainly ways. But as Father Bruno says, the industry sometimes or often doesn't seem willing to go down those routes on how we could actually create legally binding agreements to prevent retaliation, which is what you need, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of words that no one will retaliate.
Really good point. Thank you. And Donna, final word on this webinar. What points of prevention ideas would you have? A couple of them.
So I would say empowerment of worker, have them have choice is one thing for social thing that I do, and I think technology is one thing that we can help them faster. And in this day, they have a lot of technology that invest very much on fish, but not very much on how to track people, how we can help them. That's why I think for technology for fish, they can help them with sell fish to in many countries. While for the labor side of things, technology or even other labor component, not see much in terms of helping them in terms of the industry in terms of selling fish. That's why they try to press it down and lower the importance of labor component in the fish that they sell.
Thank you very much, Donna. Thank you very much, all. We've a couple of minutes over, so thanks for sticking with it. Great pleasure to hear you all. I find it very informative, and I will be doing a summary which we'll make available to everybody, and there will be the recording. Thank you very much to the IF Interfaith Forum for hosting this, and we'll be running another webinar next month on corporate governance. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.